Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the SANTON Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Hello. The SANTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM, and as always available as a podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. My name's Alexander Leibner. Hello, August. So good to see you. If you want to get in touch, you can email editor at santontimes.co.za, where you can connect with us on social media at SANTON Times. One word. And you can also visit the website www.santontimes.co.za. As always, you can send your questions or comments on social media or on email, or you can even use WhatsApp if you're listening in real time on Mix 93.8 FM. Thank you for making the time to listen again for another week. And like Evie last week, she sent through a note to say, excellent interview with Arnold Vosloo. What a pleasant, down-to-earth guy, a great ambassador for South Africa. And I agree with you, Evie, and I'm happy to report to you and to everyone else listening that all is well in Santonland. And if you didn't hear that interview, well, you can catch it on the podcast, or you can also watch it on YouTube. It's getting some great viewership on YouTube, so you can watch and listen, which is great. Vincenzo is back in the production booth. Did you have a good week? Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, me too. Yeah, mine was also good. It was packed. Packed week. Unbelievable. Like, not even a minute to breathe. It was back to school for a few days to learn about business strategy. And it was so great because it's actually the first time in a year and a half that I got to meet my MBA class. Up until this point, it was like a blind date. We were just like all on this online platform, and you actually didn't even know who these people were. It's like ships in the night. And finally, this was the first time we got to chat face to face. Amazing. Then I also emceed an international conference out of India on manufacturing IT, which was very interesting. And it was so fun to be in a room full of people again. So much like my MBA class, so nice to interact with some of the leading minds in IT, in manufacturing in South Africa. Such an interesting space. Not something that I get to spend much time on usually. Then Vinimark, well, they're probably the largest independent wine distributing and marketing company in South Africa. They hosted a showcase with more than 50 of the country's best-known wine estates at the Ananda Club. And naturally, the SANTON Times was there, and I hopefully have some good news and interesting news coming out of that. And then Decorex took place this past weekend. I don't know if you had a chance to go. Vincenzo, did you go? You're going to redesign your house now after you've been to Decorex. Well, maybe you got some good ideas. And then Legacy opened the Eiffel collective this past week at what is the Legacy Corner Mall. It's sort of attached to Nelson Mandela Square. There's more up on the website on that. Enough updating. Coming up on this week's episode, he is one of South Africa's most successful DJs and music producers, and I look forward to chatting to him about his career and his latest music releases. Then it's time to catch up on some things worth watching on the small screen and on the big screen. I'll be sharing some of my thoughts. Then talking about things to watch, I'll be chatting to one of South Africa's most well-known comedians about a lockdown project that'll get you talking about interesting places in South Africa. I don't miss that one. And finally, if you've ever thought of working on a yacht off the coast of insert exotic destination, then you better stay listening. All this and more coming up. Your headlines for this week are up next. Vincenzo, is that a saxophone? Are you going to play something for us now?
From Greater Sandton to the rest of the world, this is the SANTON Times Hour.
That's right. This is the SANTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM with Baker Matt and Goldfish, with Games Continued, featuring Marie Plassard. Vincenzo, where did you learn to play the saxophone like that? It's unreal. You're such a talent, you know that? You never fail to amaze me. It's time to take a look at our headlines for this week. So one person's been arrested for this 26 million rand jewelry robbery, which happened in Sandton. So in 2019, cast your mind back, there was a robbery of a Sandton jewelry warehouse that took place. And the Hawks have now arrested a man which they believe is one of the men involved in this robbery. It looks like more arrests are expected, as it seems like there were a few more people involved in this robbery, and to date, none of the items that were stolen have been recovered. some of the stolen items include luxury timepieces, and Times Live reported at the time that it took something like 9 hours for these men to chisel into a vault, or what seems like a safe room, in this office park at this warehouse that kept all these luxury items. 26 million rand.
My release.
Gee, that's a lot of stuff. Well, I don't know. In Rolex terms, 2 watches, 3 maybe, but that's a lot of stuff. Then, horrible story, sentencing of a man who was convicted of killing his ex-lover. So according to News24, Janssen van Vuren murdered his ex-girlfriend Andrea Venter in 2011 by stabbing her several times at her apartment in Lone Hill. And I'm honestly not going to go into all the gory details. It is really a horrible, horrible story. He then fled to Brazil 2 years later before he was to stand trial for the murder. He was extradited back to South Africa in 2020 and he was prosecuted and now found guilty. And Janssen van Vuren is expected to be sentenced in the South Gauteng High Court on August 5th, which is this week. And then finally, something a little bit lighter. There's an ostrich that was spotted on the highway. And for anyone listening to this overseas, this honestly doesn't happen all the time. I know this is like a running joke when you go overseas where people say, do you have lions walking in the street or zebras or giraffes? So contrary to popular belief, this doesn't happen all the time. But this past week, an escaped ostrich was spotted on the loose in Greater Sandton. And according to the SouthAfrican.com, the jaw-dropping sight was reported by a stunned motorist earlier this past week. She was also able to capture the big bird on film as it weaved in and out of lanes and caused chaos on William Nicol Drive. So as it stands, the ostrich still hasn't been captured, and residents of Johannesburg have been asked to keep their eyes peeled. You might also want to keep an eye out for a coyote holding a piece of rope tied to a boulder. Hashtag Looney Tunes reference. And that's it for your headlines for this week. Coming up after the break, it's one of South Africa's top DJs and music producers. It's TIMO ODV.
You're listening to the SANTON Times Hour. Follow the SANTON Times on social media.
At SANTON Times.
This is the SANTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM and available on your favorite podcast platform wherever you are in the world. My first guest for this hour is a South African DJ, producer, singer and songwriter born and raised in Kempton Park on the East Rand of Johannesburg. He has achieved over 87 million streams on various platforms and has solidified himself as one of South Africa's biggest DJs, and I'd also like to add probably biggest producers. And I'm super excited to be chatting to him today. TIMO ODV.
What's up, man?
TIMO, it is so great to have you on. I know I've spoken about you on this show before, and let's kick this off maybe with a bit of a personal story. I must be honest, I heard one of your initial tracks and started subscribing to your songs, and I was convinced this guy is sitting somewhere in Europe, in the Netherlands, and he's producing the stuff. It sounded so international. And then someone said to me one day, oh, TIMO ODV, yeah, he's from Kempton Park. I'm going, you must be joking. That is unbelievable. TIMO, in your own words, tell us about how things started and your journey.
Yeah, I think I started making music around 21 years old. Wasn't really sure what to do with life until my mate came to my house and installed some bootlegged music production software. Obviously, 21 years old, you don't have 10,000 rand for music production software, so you start off with a illegal version. And then I just sat in my room for a few years, and for my 22nd or 23rd birthday, then I'd ask my dad if I could have because I think for 2 years or so I just saved some cash up. I needed a bit more so that I could buy a full-on studio. And I just sat in my room basically for 4 years and just made music here.
Did you play the drums or piano or the violin or something to give you a little bit of direction?
No, I didn't play anything at all. I think at a certain point I had realized that I need to know music, and so I basically sat and played piano for 8 hours a day. And then I also needed to learn how to sing. So I learned how to sing by singing maybe 45 minutes a day, 4 or 5 times a week for about 2 years. until my vocal cords were developed enough and my ears could actually hear the notes. I think when I started out, I couldn't really hear if anything was like in key or out of key or whatever it was. So it took it took a few years.
Unreal. I mean, self-trained, self-taught, and now you came onto the scene in 2015 with a massive track called Save Me. It released, you signed with Universal Music South Africa, and the rest is pretty much history. I mean, Timo, tell us what kind of inspires you when you put together a track or when you start thinking about a track? Because, I mean, I know so many people, I include myself in that. I mean, I played piano for almost 10 years, and you sit there and you think, one day I'm going to write this smash hit track, it's going to go on radio, and I can retire on the interest or the royalties that I make on it. And we never get there. And here you are turning out one massive hit after another, not just for South Africa, but I think a lot of these have also gone global.
Yeah, I did quite a lot of streams in Europe and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I think that mentality was probably the wrong one to start off with. If you're just trying to churn out a hit, I think even every single one of my songs have been more. I was just sat down and tried to make something that I really loved, even if I don't love it the week after. That's typical artist. What do they call it? Analysis paralysis. It's basically where you keep making stuff but you don't like anything. I think that can also happen to a lot of artists. And yeah, so I just decided if I really love it while I'm making it, then that's good enough. And if no one likes it, then that's also fine. I think that happened with Dancing Again, where I had made it as an intro to my album. And I didn't really expect much. I can remember telling my manager and whoever, I was like, look, I don't care if everyone's doesn't like me anymore after this, because I'm changing my direction now. And this song only gets 50,000 streams instead of this 1 million. I don't really care. This is what I'm making now. Then I just put that song out, and then that song is literally my biggest song now. I think it's 4 times platinum. I think it's 3 or 4 times bigger than Save Me. And that's a good example. I just made it, didn't care what it did, and then it ended up doing more than I could have dreamed for. And Save Me was the same. I think I had made a song. If I'm super honest, I thought I was just making a song to maybe play in 1 or 2 clubs in the East Rand, and
that's unbelievable.
And then obviously it just went all over South Africa, which was pretty surreal, I think.
Timo, it's tremendous. I mean, have you had a moment in your career to date? I mean, it's literally been, as I say, since 2015 when you first released your first track, where you thought, I never thought this is how far it was going to go?
I mean, I think after the first one, I was like, okay, cool. I'm not going to buy into this hype or this lie or whatever it is. I'm like, this thing will be over by next year. And then, I don't know, I kept making music and people kept liking it for some reason. And then, yeah, I'm still here.
Unreal. And are there any artists that you've wanted to collaborate with where you've now found that you've really gotten such a fantastic following and such a fantastic slice of the market in terms of electronic dance music, that there's a couple of artists where you've said, cool, those are the people I'd like to do something with, I'd like to collaborate with?
I think not really. I think it just depends on song by song. I mean, I made that other track with Jay something, and we were talking, we'll probably, if I come up with some cool ideas, we'll make another one. I don't really think being an electronic music producer, you're so used to just sitting in your room alone, if I'm really honest with you. And you might have 2 or 3 friends that sometimes come past and you're used to having them in your space. So you end up making stuff with them. My friend Aiden K, we have a song coming out middle of next month. And it's more when things happen organically, when you're not trying to force anything along, you're just making music because you enjoy making it.
Timo, tell us about your latest release now. I mean, you've got some new tracks that are coming up on the radar.
Yeah, I think I dropped The Source 2 months or so ago, which was the more of the main single, and then I dropped just a fun track called Everybody, I think 2 weeks ago. And then in, what's the date now? I think in about 2 weeks' time, I'll be dropping another one. So I'm basically just trying to release a song maybe every 4 to 6 weeks as I make them. And then I'll probably end up bundling those plus a bonus couple of tracks for probably an album, hopefully around November. That's if I finish it, like I said. If I don't, then there's no album. Just enjoying making music, and then, as I make it, then I choose the best stuff and then I try to release it.
Well, you clearly got that formula right. I mean, you're bringing out some fantastic tracks. And I mean, summer is around the corner, summer 2022. What are your plans for this season?
I think just the usual, hey, no sleep and gig every day. Summer's, at least this one's a COVID-free summer, so yeah, back to normal. The others have been pretty bleak for the past 2 years.
So it should be quite a big one.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a good one. And yourself, what are you doing? Partying?
Timo, only if you invite me.
Playing piano, writing a piano guitar.
I feel like you're throwing shade now, Timo. I feel like you're throwing shade.
No, I'm not. I'm just trolling.
Oh my gosh. Well, Timo, listen, I hope I get to see you live this summer. And listen, congratulations on all the success you've managed to achieve in the South African market, and also, like as I say, going global and hopefully growing that following as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much, man. And thanks for taking some time in your day to talk to me. And yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome, Timo. Well, that's Timo ODV, and we're at the bottom of the hour of the SANTON Times Hour, and we'll be right back after this.
Back for more?
The SANTON Times Hour continues.
Timo ODV and Save Me featuring Sarah Jackson on the SANTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM. The song that started it all for Timo ODV. I'm Alexander Leitner. If you've just started listening, and maybe just a little bit on that track Save Me, the single achieved unheard of success. And after only a few months, it peaked on almost every chart in South Africa and was awarded gold status by the Recording Industry of South Africa in August 2015. And it was later acknowledged as one of the most played songs on South African radio of 2015 and has collectively ranked up over 13 million streams worldwide. And then in 2022, I got trolled by Timo ODV. Did you hear that, Vincenzo? How's that? Anyway, this is the second half of the SANTON Times Hour, and as always, if there's anything that caught your attention during the show, but you didn't manage to jot the details down, well, be sure to visit the show notes on www.santontimes.co.za for a detailed breakdown of everything discussed on the show. And if you would like to hear me being trolled by Timo ODV one more time, well, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. It's for free, for mahala, for nix, nothing. Giving it away on Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Also, be sure to follow the social media accounts for the SANTON Times at SANTON Times on whatever platform you're on, and you can connect, comment, and also use the WhatsApp line during this hour. Don't forget you can do that on Mix 93.8 FM, and you can also use the hashtag SANTON Times Hour, and I see all the comments coming through, and I thank you for that. Well, a little bit of time to catch up on some things you have to watch. Kicking off with WeCrashed on Apple Plus streaming. It's inspired by actual events, and there's also a bit of a love story at the center of it all. So if you're into love stories, that's there as well. The series tells the story of Adam and Rebecca Newman, who grew WeWork from a single co-working space into a global brand worth $47 billion in under a decade. And then, in less than a year, its value plummeted. So the question is, what happened?
This is what tomorrow looks like. Let there be lights and wide, open spaces. This isn't a place for people to punch in and out.
WeWork's role is to elevate the world's consciousness.
WeWork isn't just a company. It's a movement. We've got to dream.
Adam will manifest it.
It's magic and your magic.
When I say we, you say work. We work. We work. We work.
All you have is me.
You know you're not God, right?
You have to admit, I do look a little bit like him.
Well, Adam and Rebecca Newman are played by Academy Award-winning Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway, respectively. And WeCrashed is an absolutely addictive watch, let me tell you, not just for the performances, but the unbelievable story as a whole. And if you're into business, if you're into entrepreneurship and real-life stories, well, don't miss this one on Apple Plus. Then, along the same lines, but this one's on Disney Plus, take a look at The Dropout. It's another unbelievable story, this time of Elizabeth Holmes and her company Theranos that she founded. And if you don't know the story of Theranos, a really quick overview. So Elizabeth Holmes comes along and decides she's going to reinvent the world by developing this blood testing machine, which needs only one drop of blood. And it can test something over 200 different tests. And if you've ever been for a blood test in South Africa, you know how much these things cost. I mean, they cost thousands of rands. And she was looking to do this, I think for as little as $100, you could do this one drop of blood and test everything. And everyone bought into this idea. And you can understand why they bought into this idea. And yeah, let's just say the whole thing went horribly pear-shaped because there were just some fundamental things that weren't right from the beginning. But here's a quick teaser.
What I'm doing will change people's lives forever. This isn't just a job. This is my purpose. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? The answer is... anything you want.
The Dropout stars Amanda Seyfried and Naveen Andrews in the leading roles, and it's a wild story, and it's just absolutely unfathomable how quickly a good idea became a lie and escalated into the most unimaginable situation ever. There are a lot of documentaries and series being released around Elizabeth Holmes and her company Theranos ahead of her actual sentencing, which is later this year. So once again, if you enjoy business, if you enjoy real-life stories, well, make sure to catch The Dropout on Disney+. And then finally, releasing August 5th in cinemas is Eiffel, the story of the man who built the Eiffel Tower. His name was Gustav Eiffel. And the government was asking Eiffel to design something spectacular for the 1889 Paris World Fair. But Gustav Eiffel simply wanted to design a subway. And suddenly everything changed when Eiffel crossed paths with a mysterious woman. Now, the movie is totally in French with subtitles, I have to tell you. So if you're into a bit of reading, that's something for you. And if you speak French, well, then it'll be a whole lot easier. But it's a great story. It's beautifully shot. And there's also a wonderful cast in this particular movie. But I do feel they could have done more with the ending of the movie. But I suggest you go and take a look for yourself and let me know what your thoughts are.
You're listening to the SANTON Times Hour.
As you know, I always enjoy talking about South African history and travel, and my next guest is best known for some of his work in the South African comedy scene. He's also been on television, and many might know him from his corporate engagement. It's Al Prodgers. And Al, as we kick off, a quick rewind to the past 24 months of lockdown, and as someone who has been so used to engaging with people face-to-face, what has this time been like for you?
Yes, it got very weird very quickly, didn't it? Yeah, it went suddenly from a lot of work face-to-face in the room to being locked down as everyone else did. What happened to me was that I was suddenly able, in those first few months, to read all those books that I've always wanted to read. You know, the ones that are in that giant teetering pile next to your nightstand?
Absolutely.
And exactly that. The more I started to read, the more this idea began to form in my head that now that I was prohibited from traveling, how desperately I wanted to travel. And the fact that I really had forgotten and neglected and overlooked so many South African places and stories and people I wanted to reconnect with that I hadn't maybe spoken to for 30 years. And that's where the whole idea of this Just Off the Highway YouTube series began to form.
Well, let's get into that. I mean, I was watching YouTube as I do, and I mean, we're so used to so many different streaming platforms. And yet, if you dig a little bit on YouTube and you spend a bit of time, looking for great content, there is unbelievable content that can be unearthed for literally no cost to the consumer at this point. You can watch some really great content, and it's content that, for the most of it, is being produced by independent creators, and something that I absolutely love, and something that I've also started dipping my toe into. And whilst I was on this seeking path to find really interesting stuff to watch, I came across your YouTube channel and the series that you started called Just Off the Highway. And maybe in your own words, just give us a quick summary of what Just Off the Highway is all about.
Well, as you mentioned, that for decades I've worked in comedy, in corporate comedy and coaching, and very often you are adding in your client's messaging when you are doing whichever performance that you're doing. And I decided that I wanted to do something for myself, something without clients or agenda, just stories that I'm fascinated by. And this wonderful country that we have. So the image that was in my head was like a game reserve for stories, okay? The idea being that there should be a place where these stories are just allowed to roam and be accessible, and not necessarily be tied to any particular message or agenda. So that's what I started to do. At first they became, quite personal things that I know, or that my kids have asked me in the car. You're driving the kids to work in the morning. Oh, sorry, I'm going to work, they're going to school. It's about time they started earning their living. And they start asking, like, why do we live in Johannesburg? Where do the names come from? And the wonderful thing about Joburg is that it's built on a little bit of flattery and charlatan kind of deception, because Johannesburg started, of course, with Johan Russak and the other fellow whose name I forget now, Johannes somebody or other, who was the chief of mining of the old Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek. And the Johan and Johannes got together and called this mining camp Johannesburg or Johannesburg. And then Paul Kruger, the president, he was a little bit miffed, and he said, well, why didn't you name it after me? And they responded and said, but we did name it after you, sir, because, of course, your second name is Johannes. He was actually Stephanus Johannes Paul Kruger. And so they flattered the old man, and that's how they got the name Johannesburg to stick, or Johannesburg. And I just think that's a wonderful indication of what Johannesburg is. It's got an element of the trickster about it. And of course, it's a constantly changing place, and the stories constantly change. And I just wanted to capture some of those for my own fun and interest.
Look, I think it's great. I mean, anyone who gets a chance to start watching Just Off the Highway, I mean, they're short clips. And when I say short, they're maybe like 10, 15 minutes. Really
actually,
nicely.
5 to 10 minutes.
5 to 10 minutes, so you don't have to take out too much time to watch them, and they're really nicely produced. And like you said, it's not the definitive take on history. You're not getting sort of a Smithsonian, National Geographic sort of talk. It's really if we were meeting for dinner, or if we were hanging around a bushfire somewhere, and someone said, "I wonder where that comes from," or "Have you ever thought about that?" and someone's got a good story to share, and that's really what it is. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. And like you said, South Africa's got this really fascinating history, and a lot of these stories are not told. And I mean, you've really had a couple of great stories that you've already shared on the channel. What are some of the ones that really stand out for you?
Well, as you say, are these stories true? I believe they are, but I don't always know. I do believe, even more than how perfect they are, would you swear to them in court? I think they're necessary. I think they're necessary for us all to just have an inkling of where we stand. I don't claim for it to be definitive at all. And of course, there are many different influences, but I found these wonderful things. For example, just staying on the names, we all know the famous Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I discovered that the word Baragwanath dates back to the early mining days, where Welsh miners were brought to Johannesburg for their knowledge of mining, and they lived very close to the early mines in the center of Johannesburg. And the Welsh community, apparently there was a bakery that was known for the quality of its bread, its wonderful fluffy bread. You can imagine in those days, those mining days, fresh bread must have been something quite special. And the Welsh word or words for white bread are Baragwanath.
How's that?
Is that not insanely strange? How we don't make the connections anymore. Now, would I swear to that in a court of law? No, but I think it's necessary just to be part of the playlist, so that we don't just drive through our city on autopilot. The idea here is that, we look at things. Anybody who's in my part of the world, which is Johannesburg North, right?
Yeah.
Johannesburg North has this great story where in the 1920s, according to the story, people went to the UK and invited investment in what they called the north of Johannesburg, between Market and Pritchard Streets. And a lot of investors invested in what they thought was the center of Johannesburg, as in the north of Johannesburg. They thought they were buying prime property in the middle of the city, and they were actually buying out in the veld 30 kilometers away in what became the suburb of Johannesburg North. So as I said, there's again this element of trickery that hangs around Johannesburg.
The more things change, the more things stay the same.
Exactly. And there in Johannesburg North, near the Olivedale Clinic, thousands of vehicles drive past the Olivedale Clinic every day. And I've driven past there. I've lived in this area for 16 years. And it was last year that I discovered that just around the corner from the Olivedale Clinic is an old windmill. It is now part of a nursery school. And what I discovered was that windmill that is still standing was built in 1943 by Italian prisoners of war. The farmer in the area had a picture of what he wanted. He was of Dutch extraction, and he wanted a windmill, and he got the Italian prisoners of war. And there is a sunken garden and an old windmill that is still standing, and they're national monuments, and they were built by prisoners of war. And they inscribed inside, they made a secret inscription inside the windmill, and they wrote "Death to Boredom," because they were so bored in the prisoner of war camp at Zonderwater that they actually put in a secret inscription. And we drive past this piece of history every single day, and we just don't even realize it anymore. So that's the kind of thing that I've been having fun with.
Well, listen, if that's whet your appetite, then you're going to get onto YouTube, and you're going to type in "Just Off the Highway" with Al Prodgers, and you're going to hear a whole lot more of these stories. And I mean, there's just so many to cover that we're not even going to get through all of them right now. But you're definitely going to enjoy some of the stuff that's coming out on Al's YouTube channel, talking about just some of the incredible stories that we have in and around Johannesburg and in and around South Africa. And Al, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the SANTON Times Hour.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thanks for the time to chat to the listeners. And please, if anybody is interested or has a story to share, please just go into the comments on YouTube and tell me any kind of story, and I'll start searching it up, because that's part of the fun. Is these things are not found necessarily in encyclopedia or on Google. They're found by real people staring into the fire, that bush TV, staring into the bush TV and telling stories, and that's what I love so much.
Fantastic. Well, it's time for some music, and I'll be right back after that.
From Greater Santon to the rest of the world, this is the SANTON Times Hour.
This is the SANTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM and available on your favorite podcast platform wherever you are in the world. And that was Mike Posner with "I Took a Pill in Ibiza," the Seab remix. And, well, never mind taking a pill in Ibiza. I mean, just a holiday right now would be good enough, quite honestly. But anyway, speaking about Ibiza, where a lot of people find themselves at this point as the European summer comes to an end, and the Mediterranean as a whole, I've come across so many people that I know that are looking at the opportunity of going to go work on yachts in Europe and all kinds of other exotic places in the world. And I've had some incredible encounters with people who've been trained to work on yachts, and that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But I was just blown away by the maturity, professionalism, and just the polish that comes with people who've trained to be yacht stewards or stewardesses. And I'm just fascinated by this idea, where people are taking gap years, or they're deciding to take just a totally different trajectory on life, and deciding to go work on super yachts, on yachts in the Mediterranean. And I thought, well, let's get someone in that space to talk to us about this particular career. And I'm thrilled to be joined by James Grimstead. He's a senior instructor with Super Yachting South Africa. And James, thank you so much for joining us on the SANTON Times Hour.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome on board. I don't know, is that the right...
Aye. Thank you.
Oi, oi. James, maybe just take us through kind of the lay of the land. I know that there's a lot of reality shows that are popping up talking about being a deckhand or working on the decks of super yachts. Have you seen a massive increase in the interest in becoming a yacht steward or a hand on a yacht?
It's funny you should say that. Yes, since especially since lockdown, there's been a huge uptake in young people trying to get overseas to go and work on yachts, because I think it is such a unique opportunity, especially for young South Africans, to get abroad and see a bit the rest of the world whilst earning good money as they do it. So yes, we've been pretty busy in the last year or so.
So what is the procedure? I mean, you get a lot of young people, they finish school, they want to, see the world, or they want to try something else. Some of them decide to sign up and become cabin crew on airlines. And then there's a group of people who say, you know what, I actually want to get closer to the ocean. I want to go work on a yacht. And what is that journey that they go on?
The journey itself it is quite a long journey, and it would start with obtaining some basic qualifications that you need to work at sea in general, not specifically yachts, which are referred to as your STCW qualifications. And every seafarer that puts to sea must have those qualifications. And whilst you're training for those, you're going to be doing things like learning how to firefight. You're going to be doing some basic first aid courses, some survival at sea, that kind of thing, for all your emergency scenarios that you may face whilst working on a boat. And then you would go and do some basic qualifications that are going to teach you general seamanship and small boat handling. So of particular demand, especially on a super yacht, when working on the exterior, when working on deck, you need to be able to drive small power boats, jet skis and other water sports toys. So we would train you up on doing that, so you've got the necessary skill set before going overseas. And then there's a few other considerations that you have to make as well, like getting appropriate visas for the countries that you're going to be going to visit, and then your essentially your job hunting can begin.
Is there a hospitality aspect to it as well? I mean, do you have to also learn how to cook and clean and make the bed and all of those things?
It depends what department you're going into. On a large super yacht, and a large super yacht in the super yacht industry is anything sort of 40 meters and above. And super yachts can sort of range from 40 meters up to, I think there's yachts out there that are 180 meters in length now. So they're not really yachts, they're ships. As you go up in size of the yacht, you'll have your specific departments. So if you go onto a large yacht, on the exterior, on the deck crew, you'll be solely working on the outside of the boat and doing those tasks associated with working on deck. And you will have a separate department, an interior department, that will be concerned with the housekeeping, which is your laundry and turning down the cabins, and your service team, which will be working front of house, so to speak, which is giving first class service to the guests directly. So it depends on what department you want to go into. If you were to go onto a smaller boat, there's more kind of crossover skills because there are less crew on board. So you're going to have to be, you're going to have a broader skill set, so to speak. And you may well, as a deckhand, start getting involved with a bit of guest service and, yes, a bit of laundry, a bit of cleaning the interior as well.
Well, then there's always that wonderful moment of reality versus perception. And I take it that a lot of people perceive to work on yachts as being this very glamorous sort of job where you're wearing sort of white linen suits, and you kind of get to live on a super yacht which maybe has a helicopter pad or doesn't have one, or jet skis attached to the back of it, and the one morning you find yourself docking in Monte Carlo, the next it's Saint-Tropez, and then there's the reality of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Alex, because I think a lot of people coming to us have a bit of a jilted idea of what the industry actually entails. Yes, there is lots of glamour, and there's lots of pinch yourself moments where you can't actually believe you're being paid to do the job that you're doing. But for as much of that, the majority of the work that you're going to be doing on deck is going to be getting your hands dirty, going to be doing manual labor, essentially. Our job as deck crew working on the exterior is to make the boat look incredible at all times, to give the guests the best possible experience, and to sort of maintain that image of absolute luxury. And in order to do that, obviously, we have to get our hands dirty. So you can often find yourself in some sort of dark recess of the vessel, cleaning some sort of mess, and essentially doing the dirty work. So that's the nitty gritty detail. That's the bare bones of the job.
And I suppose you don't really have much of a choice as to where you really end up or what yacht you end up on until you're actually on the yacht.
They call the owners of these yachts are called the owners for two reasons. One, they own the yacht, and two, they own your life, essentially. So you have zero control over anything that the yacht is doing. You just have to understand that when you board that yacht and you're going on board as professional crew, you leave your life on the quayside, and then you become you have to react to the beck and call of the boss at all times, which can actually make for quite an interesting job, because you never know where you're going to be from one day to the next. You know, you could get the phone call to say, I want the yacht over here, you know, halfway around the world, and all of a sudden you're stowing that yacht for sea, and then you're crossing the Atlantic to go to the Caribbean, for example. It can make for quite an exciting lifestyle, but the caveat to that is that you have no life, you have no say in what happens.
Well, I can tell you, I've had some sort of great chats to some international yacht stewardesses, unbelievably well trained, and they shared some stories with me from one who'd worked for one of the top international fashion designers, who was an absolute pleasure to work for in terms of his family, himself, very humble, not too complicated, beautiful yacht, obviously all designed by his fashion house. And then the polar opposite with someone who worked for a multi-millionaire who decided to open every door handle and every touchable surface on the yacht with a tissue, and then subsequently dropped the tissue, and she spent her entire day just picking up tissues behind him for whatever reason. So it can go really ugly, and it can possibly be one of the worst experiences you've ever been on, or it could be absolutely divine, and you end up making lifelong memories.
Yeah, it is a industry of extremes, and you can be going from extreme highs to extreme lows. And I can totally relate to those stories that you've just said. And I too have worked for different owners. Some have been an absolute delight to work for, and some have been horrendous. You know, so you've got to take with the highs with the lows. But at the end of the day, you've got to have that sort of thick skin and that strong sense of character to ride above it all, and to deliver consistent good service at the end of the day.
Well, there you have it. James Grimstead, senior instructor with Super Yachting South Africa, talking about working on yachts, owning yachts. That's another conversation altogether. Maybe we'll cover that on another week, but that's going to entail a little bit more money to do that. But that's it for another SANDTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM, and as always available as a podcast on Apple, Google and Spotify. As always, if you want to get in touch, you can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za or connect with us on social media @SANDTON Times, and also visit the website www.sandtontimes.co.za, and feel free to send through your questions, your comments, even a check or an e-wallet. We'll accept everything, and all of it is welcome. Thank you to all our guests who've made the time to be on this week's episode, and also Vincenzo, thanks so much. As always, you've done a great job. And thank you to the SANDTON Times team, and also everyone at Mix 93.8 FM. And of course you, for listening every single week. And let's connect again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the SANDTON Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.